Hi there. Welcome to the From Lab to Launch podcast by Qualio, where we share inspiring stories from the people on the front lines of life sciences. Tune in and leave inspired to bring your life-saving products to the world. Now let's get started with Robert, Qualio founder and CEO, and our show host.
Ram is a managing partner at FreeMind Consultants, which helps life sciences organizations secure non-dilutive funding from U.S. federal agencies and private foundations. FreeMind Consultants started in 1999 and since then has grown into the largest consulting group of its kind. With experience in seeking funding from nearly all NIH Institutes, Department of Defense, NSF, FDA, BARDA, and more, in addition to private foundations, they've helped clients garner over $1.5 billion to date, and awards range from $150,000 all the way up to $150 million per project. For over a decade, Ram Mehran has been a leading figure within FreeMind. If funding is on your mind for your life sciences company, you need to consider what Ram has to say in this podcast. Ram, really excited to have you join the show today. You work in an area, I think, that's of incredible interest to basically every company that we interact with. And I think in particular, when it comes to funding in life sciences, it's traditionally been like a really capital intensive business. And although that's going down to some degree over time, I think it's still an incredibly important area. So I just want to start off and I'd love to hear a bit more about you, what brought you to FreeMind and, how you help companies.
Well, maybe starting just a little bit about what FreeMind is, because I think the context here is very, very important. You're right. I mean, funding is ultimately what it's all about. And, infamous valley of death, all life science companies hear and fear from is pretty much what we're trying to deal with or help our clients deal with, help the industry deal with. Very, very quickly, the valley of death, obviously, is that point where a company has a great idea, a great product. They went through the lab, they've done great work, but now to move forward, to test it on people, they actually need to spend tens of millions of dollars. And just being able to reach to this kind of money is difficult. And so many companies just can't do that. And there's not enough money there. And so what we try to do is we've found that there's a huge amount of money out there that people to a great degree are not aware of. The government, primarily the federal government, but there are other sources, private sources as well, provide substantial financial support to research and development in the life sciences. And when I talk about substantial, it's way over $60 billion a year. That's a lot of money. Now, It's true. They will all tell you that it goes primarily to universities and research conducted. It's absolutely true. But, the NIH alone, their SBIR program awards over $1 billion each and every year. That's more than any other VC out there. Even the large $2 billion VCs don't give away $2 billion each and every year. The SBIR program for NIH alone, not talking about NSF, CDC, FDA, the DoD, in addition to that, just SBIR at NIH is over $1 billion a year in awards. And the beauty of it all, it's non-dilutive. I mean, there's literally no shares you give, no royalty payments you pay, no paybacks. And so we don't claim this is the sort of money that will sustain a company to success. But it's definitely a strategic source that should not be ignored. And way too many people in the industry are just not aware of what's out there. They just don't know. They think either it's the old grants they used to write when they were, graduate students at some professor's lab, or it's the very small SBIR for $100,000. Both are just not true. Last year, our largest award for a single client was over $40 million for a single award. They don't do just early stage preclinical. They do a lot of translational, they do a lot of digital health, they do a lot of clinical, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 support. And so this is a strategic source of funding. But as with any market, there are difficulties. It's not easy. It's very hard to identify the right funding opportunity. NIH alone has 27 different institute centers. Some of them are overlapping in what they do. I mean, if you develop an Alzheimer's focused therapeutics or device or whatever, The NINDS, National Institute for Neurological Disorders and Stroke, seems to be the right place. But the Aging Institute, National Aging Institute, has a great Alzheimer's program as well. So which one do you pick? The DoD, Department of Defense, under the CDMRP or under the VA, will have additional money for Alzheimer's. The ADDF, the private foundation, has yet more money dedicated to Alzheimer's research. Where do you go to match the money that you need for your particular project? That's what we try to help our clients with. Know where to go, navigate through this system, which is huge, and then help them write the applications to maximize their potential of winning. And we're able to bring our clients about $100 to $150 million each and every year. That's a lot of money.
Yeah, and on that, Ram, just for those people who aren't well versed, you mentioned a lot of acronyms, which tells me this is all government bodies and government funding. You mentioned SBIR a few times. So NIH being, I think everybody's familiar with the National Institutes of Health and their work. The SBIR, maybe you could explain to people what that is.
Right. So the NIH, of course, is National Institutes of Health, which is the largest organization. It's under the HHS, the Department for Health and Human Services, and their budget is about $43 billion a year, 2/3 of which are awarded to external research. About a third is used internally in their own labs. About 2/3 are awarded to external research, both at industry companies and at universities, and by the way, all across the world, not only to American companies or universities. The SBIR is the Small Business Innovative Research Program. SBIR is dedicated to support only small companies. Small companies would be under 200 employees, if I'm not wrong. And I'm not sure, it's either 200 or 500. I need to check that. But as far as I remember, it's 200, under 200 employees. And they need to be owned at least 51% by American citizens. So no non-Americans can get an SBIR program. The SBIR program has 3 phases, but the first 2 are the most important ones. Phase 1 usually are short, 6 to 12 months. And they're not huge in funding. They're kind of the doorway. You step in, right? And the phase 1, usually you'll get about $250,000 in direct cost and about 40% on top of that for indirect cost for overheads. The real jam, though, is the SBIR phase 2, because once you win an SBIR phase 1, you're eligible, once you complete that, you're eligible to submit for a phase 2. And a phase 2 could be between $1.5 million and up to $3 million sometimes even. So that could be substantial money. Again, all of it is non-dilutive, completely non-dilutive, no strings attached, no royalty payments, no matching funds, no restrictions whatsoever. So this is the SBIR program, very, very important program. But it's just a relatively small program, $1 billion out of $43 billion. There are many others. And then each federal agency will have their own SBIR program. So you have an NSF SBIR, you have an FDA SBIR, you have a DoD SBIR. Again, each is focusing on a slightly different focus scientifically.
So I think just the message is there's an incredible amount that's there. How would you suggest people look at this versus more traditional venture funding?
Well, I wouldn't suggest to give up on venture funding. Venture funding is incredibly important, but it gives you a different type of funding, if you will. First and foremost, it's important to remember it's non-dilutive. So for early stage companies, for entrepreneurs, to keep as much as they can of their company is crucial. Obviously, any money coming in from a VC or from a family office or angel, they'll need to pay in shares. Government doesn't take shares in your company. It's all yours. So that's an important part. It's kind of free money. It's not completely free, but it's kind of free money. But beyond the cash, which is obviously the main point, there are other additional, very substantial attributes. Probably the most important one is the fact that a dollar coming from NIH or from the Department of Defense or from BARDA is worth a lot more than a dollar coming from any other investor. And the reason is that to go through the process of winning an award from NIH or BARDA or DoD, you go through a review process conducted by the top researchers in the world. And so once you're there, once you get scored for your science, you basically get a seal of approval from the top researchers in the world, from your dream advisory board, if you will. All those people you would love to have on your advisory board have reviewed your research, your science, And not only that, they gave you a score, how good are you? And it's a scale, so you can compare it to other projects you've submitted. But also, they've given you a full report with every detail of what they think is good or bad or should be fixed. And that's really great. And there are several studies showing that once a company receives money from non-dilutive funding within a certain period of time, several years, this $1 will accumulate into $8 on average, because venture capital investors or other investors, they love to see that you are able to bring on your own as an entrepreneur. B, that it's free money, even better, they get more shares, right? And C, that the top researchers in the world told them that this is good science. So actually getting non-dilutive funding is a great pathway towards getting more and in better terms, venture money or other type of investments.
Yeah. What's the catch?
Well, there is none. It's a lot of work. Success
Yeah.
rate is very low. But then again, it's about single digit to 12, 15%
Wow.
on average. That's not easy. But then again, if you ask any CEO when they start raising money from the venture market, I don't think you get to better success rates. It doesn't take less time. It's about a year. To get the final decision on an award takes about 8 months. So it takes time. And then you need to report on everything you do. But then again, as in with any other investor, I can't believe any investor will give you $3 million and not expect to hear what you've done with the money. So I don't think it's that different. I just think it's a different, state of mind. It's a different way of approaching science. But there isn't really a catch in the sense of what you pay.
And I'm curious, do most successful life sciences companies take this path generally as well as an addition to traditional sources?
Well, yes, I believe so. So this is actually very interesting. We've conducted, much like you guys, we really like to see, we work with about 200, 250 companies a year. And we submit about 800 applications every year. So we've got a huge database accumulated over just over 21 years we've been in business, right? So we basically took our entire database between 2013 and 2016, and we asked ourselves a question. So we know what our clients did as far as NIH or DoD or non-dilutive funding is concerned. How did they do with the market? How good businesses are they? And we've just started researching, right? And we found amazing statistics. We actually found that companies with a score at NIH, not even those that were awarded the money, but those that got a good score, 21% of them have exited through an M&A or an IPO within 4 years. So basically what you've just asked me, yes, companies who do well there, surprise, surprise, good science ultimately wins, right? So companies who got good score on their science, because NIH doesn't really review how good a manager you are or how good a market you've got. They look into your science. How solid is your data? How good is your research plan? How great is your background to do what you claim you want to do? So companies with good science, good teams, and good research plan ended up, getting an IPO or an M&A within a fairly short period of time with, 10x, 17x, 20 plus X on the money.
Yeah. Okay. And I'm curious, with you folks being part in the business, right, of helping people be successful here, it sounds incredibly complicated. Do you have any stats to share on, I guess, assuming the merits of the business are good, which you can't control for? Do you have any stats to share on like the delta between do it yourself versus work with somebody like you folks to navigate?
We can only compare ourselves to publicly available data, right? We don't have any other source of data. And on average, we would get to about 2 to 3 times the NIH or DoD or BARDA average. Again, it's a very tricky thing to figure out because there are dozens of different mechanisms of funding. Each of them is a bit different, and each review group is different, obviously, from the next. So you're kind of comparing not apples and oranges, but different types of apples, if you will. So it ranges between different numbers, but on all of them, we see between 2 and 3 times the average. We get about twice as successful as the others.
Yeah, this is really incredibly insightful. I really appreciate you sharing all this, Ram. I guess making this actionable for people who might be listening and are in this certain different paths or stages of their business. At what point would a business be where it would make sense to consider these application pathways and consider maybe working with folks like you?
Well, considering non-dilutive funding at the very beginning, before you even spin out of university. I mean, all companies I know within the life sciences have spun out of universities at one point or another. All contact got into the university still, their founder, the professor they used to work with, whatever. There are programs within NIH, within DoD, within those sources of funding, within those agencies. There are programs designed to support collaboration between university and industry. So first thing you do, you look into an STTR. That's another acronym that focuses on academia industry collaboration, and you put together an application to get money for the work you've already done anyways with yourself, between yourselves and the professor you used to work with at the university where this innovation came out of. That's a start. Then you submit SBIR. Some of the programs, like an R21 application, for example, mechanism of funding, is designed to support very early stage research, even exploratory type research where you don't have a lot of data. This is where you start. Once you've got more data, you move on to an R01, a UO1, all different mechanisms of funding, doesn't matter. So that's very important, as early as possible. When do you engage with us? Hey, we're biased here. It's can't afford us as far as I'm concerned, because we're not cheap and we are a business. But definitely, I will say, people talk to program officers within NIH, within DoD, within NSF. They would love to hear from you. That's their job. Ask them, is your research a good fit to what they're managing, to their program? They will tell you, and trust their judgment. They're professionals. It's hard to identify the right funding opportunity. You go through NIH listings on available opportunities, but you have to keep in mind about 60% of all NIH awards are not solicited. And that's a good thing because they keep them open. Any idea you have, pitch it to them and they may fund it. So that's a good thing that it's open on the one hand. On the other, it makes it harder to identify the right one for you. So just go there, try. And maybe the most important element of it is it's not a one-time shot. It's not, if you treat it like a lottery ticket, hey, there's one application, let's try it. Let's put together an application, try, do our best, see what happens. You may win, you may not. Statistics are not great. But if you do it on a very systematic manner, you submit 3, 4, 5, 10, 20 applications a year. And yes, we've got clients working with us on 20 submissions each and every year. You get to the point where you get $1, $2, $3, $5 million coming into the company on a regular basis for free. And that's a pretty good place to be in as an entrepreneur.
Yeah. It would be nice if every business had access to that.
At least
right. How you describe it.
You're right. I would love to get some grants myself, but it supports research and development. But again, it takes patience, it takes persistence, it takes systematic and methodological work, identifying the right opportunities, submitting more. And even if you fail, that's okay. It doesn't mean that those reviewers don't know what they're talking about. They probably do. Read carefully their remarks. Go through the feedback you received. Correct whatever needs to be corrected. Resubmit. You'll do better.
Yeah, that's incredibly helpful, Ram. I guess we're coming to the end of the time we've allotted for today. I'm curious, is there any kind of final takeaways you'd like to share with listeners?
Not really, beyond what I've already said. I mean, there's so much more to talk about, say about non-dilutive funding. It's an endless world. Again, over $50 billion. That's a lot of money. But ultimately, every dollar you get from there is incredibly substantial. And even if you don't get the money, even if you just get a score and a review from the top researchers in the world, in any other circumstances, one would have paid a lot of money to have those individuals review their work and give them feedback. So just, take advantage of it. It's a great resource. Even if you don't get the money, it's a wonderful resource.
I appreciate that. And where would people go to keep learning about this?
Number one, NIH.gov. I mean, that's an easy one. DoD.
Sources.
I mean, just look it up on Google. We at FreeMind, we hold an annual summit. That's the Non-Dilutive Funding Summit. We hold it in San Francisco every year in January during the JP Morgan Healthcare Conference. We've been doing that for 17 years now, I believe, and we always have some agency directors come over to give presentations, etc. Log on to our website. We have tons of data, webinars on different, on cancer, CNS, Alzheimer's, whatever, on different elements. We try to do a lot of educational work to try and promote understanding and knowledge of dilutive funding. So that's pretty much it, I guess. Yeah, well, pretty much it is a lot in this case. Ram, thank you so much.
Yeah, it's a lot of content in a short amount of time today. Thank you very much for joining. I'm looking forward to sharing this with everybody, and you might get some people reaching out to you. And I think it's really valuable to have a greater awareness of this and some support. So thank you for taking some time out. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Robert. Really great talking to you. Appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of From Lab to Launch, brought to you by Qualio. If you like what you've heard, please subscribe and give the show a positive review. It really helps us out. For more information about Qualio, our guest today, or to be a guest on a future episode, please refer to the show notes. Until next time.